Well, hello everyone. How are you tonight? Looks like we got a pretty good crowd, friends and family both. That's always good to see. You know, the fall's coming fast and the summer's kind of waning down. Here in my part of the country, we've had thunder, lightning, and rain for the last six nights. I hope you've had some pretty good weather where you are, and it's been an interesting summer to say the least. They're talking about a nice wet winter too, which makes these evenings around the campfire all the more special. We all get to kind of relax, get the day's stress off of us, and maybe laugh a little, and maybe just hear a story that's entertaining. So get you a cup of coffee, get you something, sit down around this fire, maybe get you a blanket. It's a little cooler tonight. And let me tell you a story. Well, I got a Hank Dillon story for you right now. And this is Project Silva. The Cryptid War begins. It makes this part 7. So let's get started. The cabin was silent, except for the crackle of the wood in the wood stove and the steady flicker of the lantern flame. Hank sat forward on the edge of his chair, his fingers laced tight, his whole body tense like a drawn bow. Wade leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes locked on the floor. Michelle stood by the window, her breath fogging the glass as she peered into the night. Ghost Horse's voice was low but urgent. You've initiated contact. You've bridged the gap. Now it's time to make a solid plan. Once the public finds out that the government has been making cryptids, hybrids, it might incite mass hysteria and panic. You can't put that genie back in the bottle. Now your brother is the key. Jacob isn't just a hybrid, he's proof. Proof that the government has been splicing cryptid DNA with human stock for decades now. Proof that the rumors were true. That they've been building soldiers, weapons, things that should never exist. Ghost Horse leaned back in his chair, the shadows under his eyes deeper than usual, the firelight cutting hard lines across his face. Well, there, he just said it. He said the thing that they'd all been thinking, but none of them had dared to say out loud. If Jacob steps out of the shadows, Ghost Horse repeated, slowly, deliberately, every cryptid still in hiding will see it as a sign. The Wendigo, the Mothman, skinwalkers, the creatures you hunt, they'll stop hiding. Some will come to fight for freedom. He let the words hang like smoke in the air. Michelle was the first to speak. Her voice was quiet, but it trembled with weight. You're talking about changing everything. Ghost Horse nodded. Not just changing, upending. We're talking about bringing to light a subject that's been considered mythology for just as long as this planet's been populated with human beings. We're talking about unraveling centuries of human belief. We are telling the world that the things hiding under the bed and lurking in the woods, that they're real, that they've always been real, that all the things that we've written off as fairy tales and campfire stories are real. Now, what does happen when people realize that they've been lied to their whole lives? Now, society doesn't survive something like that unchanged. It fractures. It panics. It fights back. Wade leaned forward. Well, let's say that the Mothmen suddenly step out of the fog in Point Pleasant. Let's say that the skinwalkers stop lurking on the Navajo Nation's back roads and walk into the daylight. Let's say there's a damn Wendigo in northern Canada that shows up in a neighborhood. What then? People start believing in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, werewolves? Ghost Horse's voice dropped low, but his words stuck like thunder. What happens is, the world learns that monsters are real, but not all of them are monsters at all. Some are human beings, humans who've been hunted, hidden, caged, experimented on, and demonized for the sake of keeping the public comfortable. Some people will panic. Some will say that they saw this coming. Many of them are going to think it's some kind of elaborate hoax. Now others are going to try to worship them. Hank finally spoke, his voice steady but haunted. If Jacob shows himself, it's not just our story anymore. When people are afraid, they build walls, they build weapons, they build lies. But this time, the lie will be broken. The paradigm will shift. The truth won't fit in a classified folder anymore. Wade gave a dry laugh, shaking his head. The news networks are going to go insane. YouTube will turn into a war zone of conspiracy theorists and believers and those who will deny every bit of this. And Michelle added, churches will call it the end times, and many people will try to kill them just for existing, just because they're different. Ghost Horse nodded gravely. Yeah, some will react with fear. Some are going to react with hate. But some, he paused, letting his words settle, some will react with hope. Because if they exist, if the cryptids exist, then we're not alone in this story. The earth has deeper roots than we've ever imagined, deeper bloodlines, forgotten cousins. Ghost Horse leaned farther forward, elbows on the table, voice sharp with conviction. It's time for a paradigm shift. It's time to stop pretending the world is only what we can see in the daylight. It's time to stop calling everything we don't understand evil. And it's time to listen and accept that there's more to this world than what we can see and explain. Michelle rubbed her eyes. And what if they don't want to listen? What if humanity just isn't ready for this? Ghost Horse looked at her and smiled faintly, sadly. Then we show them. We don't ask for permission. We just show them the truth. Wade clenched his fists. And if the truth brings war? Ghost Horse didn't blink, and then he let it come. By this time, the cryptids won't be alone. They'll have a voice. They'll have allies, others like them. They'll have you. Hank nodded, looking up from the table. Well, the only way to protect Jacob is to get the story out. We don't let the government spin this into a monster narrative. We make people see, we let the world decide what kind of world it wants to be, accepting of the truth or disbelieving. Ghost Horse looked at the three of them and said quietly, the Dillon brothers are changing history. Not with guns, not with bombs, but with truth. Your dad would be proud of you. Hank smirked at the comment. Yeah, right. Our old man was knee-deep in this long before we were born. He buried the truth. He covered for him. He let him do this to Jacob. I wish he was here to see us set this right. In the dark forest, Jacob waited and listened. The forest was still, but Jacob felt the currents of an invisible lattice of sound and scent and thought, older than human history. He crouched low on the ridge, his massive frame blending into the shadows of the spruce. And from a distance, he looked like a hulking silhouette of muscle and fur, but inside, the part of him that was Jacob Dillon, the boy who once dreamed of fishing trips with his father, stirred uneasily. He was not just a man. He was not just a beast. He was something forged between worlds, and he could feel the others, both human and non-human. You hear me, he projected. He pushed his thoughts outward, and the air shimmered with tension. You've been listening to me all along. From the tree line, a ripple of presence answered. Not sound, not language, just recognition. A rustle. Then two glowing eyes caught the light and vanished again. A figure the size of a bear padded closer, silent as mist, fur black as midnight. And another followed, smaller, with a face half hidden by foliage, its body thin and wiry, movements sharp and erratic like a shadow caught in broken glass. Jacob closed his eyes. His chest rose and fell with the weight of what he was about to do. His mind reached further, reaching the farthest most corners of the earth. It wasn't words, not the kind human tongues could form, but vibrations. A rhythm older than firelight and cave paintings. The moment he released it into the air, the soundless cry threaded through the forests, mountains, rivers, and the oceans. It wasn't bound by distance or walls. It was carried in memory, in instinct, in the marrow of every living being. And they heard it and responded. Shapes detached themselves from the trees. Creatures only whispered about in backwoods taverns and seen on grainy trail camera footage. Dogmen, shadow creatures, things with antlers that shimmered and disappeared between one breath and the next. In the Pacific Northwest, figures shifted among the ferns, massive shoulders, matted hair, eyes reflecting faint amber light. The call hummed through their bones like a tuning fork. Slowly, one by one, they tipped their heads back and exhaled long, low growls. The sound traveled down the mountains, echoed across the forest, and called to all the others who had been silent for centuries. High up in the Appalachians, the Mothmen stirred, perched along crumbling coal towers, leathery wings unfurling for the first time in decades. Red eyes, like embers, blinked in unison as the signal reached them. They did not speak in words, but in pulses of light and vibration, answering Jacob's cry with their own frequency. In the far north, something older than folklore moved through the drifts, the Wendigo. Its hunger gnawed, eternal and sharp, but even that hunger stilled when Jacob's call rippled through the frozen air. This wasn't prey, this was kin. The creature's jaws parted, releasing a soundless scream that fractured across the tundra like a blade of ice. And beneath the ocean, where human lights never touched, massive shadows stirred, sensing the old language vibrate through saltwater currents. Leviathans deep in the trench swam closer to the surface, drawn to the song that had been dormant since the dawn of myth. Even the loch, quiet for centuries, rippled with movement as Nessie raised her long neck towards the moonlight, hearing Jacob's call. They are coming for us. They want us erased. For decades they've hunted us, hidden us, locked us away, cut into us, forced us into cages and told the world we were myths. They call us monsters to keep their own secrets safe. The air pulsed with agitation. Cryptids across the world shifted and growled and snorted in their own unique languages. Their rage was palpable. Jacob raised his head, golden eyes flashing in the half-light of the morning. We are not monsters. We are the firstborn of the old world, the children of the earth, of river and rock and flame. They hide us because they fear us, and they fear us because they know the truth. We are stronger, wilder, freer than anything their laboratories could ever build. I was born human. I was remade by their hand. I carry their mark, and I hate it. But it gives me the voice to speak to both worlds. Listen now. The time has come. We cannot run any longer. We cannot stay shadows at the edge of the fire. It is time to step into the blaze. It is time to fight for our survival. It is time for them to see us. Jacob's voice thundered inside their skulls, no longer hesitant but full and commanding. We will no longer be secrets. We will no longer be their experiments. We are legend and we are real. We are here and we will rise. Across the whole world the cry erupted. Roars, screeches, calls that rattled the trees. An uproar that no man could mistake for wind or thunder. The hidden world gathered in a single voice. Jacob lifted his face to the sky, and for the first time, he did not flinch at what he was. Ghost Horse narrowed his eyes and whispered, almost reverently, "It's begun." Deep in the recesses of a hidden tunnel under Nellis Air Force Base, the fluorescent lights hummed faintly in the conference chamber. The long oval table gleamed under the artificial lights, a polished slab of black stone that reflected the strained faces of the people seated around it. At one end sat General Preston Harlan, his rigid posture like an iron bar holding the room together. Beside him, Dr. Meredith Klein, head geneticist, shuffled a thin stack of files, though her knuckles betrayed her nerves as they whitened against the paper's edge. On the screen mounted against the far wall, a live feed flickered, showing the specimen in the adjacent containment wing. The creature writhed weakly against its restraints, its half-human face drawn and gaunt, yet unmistakably aware. Muscles spasm under its sickly gray-tinged skin. An IV dripped sedatives into its veins, through its eyes, unnatural golden irises rimmed with black. Still darted, alert, intelligent, and listening. Harlan cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "I've called you all together today," General Harlan explained, his voice low and deliberate, carrying the weight of authority, "to discuss an anomaly that's occurred over the last several hours. We've had reports from labs out of various locations in Nevada, Colorado, Washington State, and Maine. Test subjects in each of these areas appear to be awakening. We've increased the sedative dosages, but it doesn't appear to be working, and every lab is experiencing the same thing." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. No one moved. Finally, Colonel David Harris, sharp features, nervous energy flickering in his eyes, spoke up. "Sir, with all respect, doesn't this sound almost identical to what happened at Facility Black Dome before the breach?" He glanced around the table, lowering his voice. "We all know what that cost us. If these things are communicating, like the Black Dome subjects did, we could be facing another coordinated attack, and maybe worse." A murmur rippled through the room. "We're talking about telepathic networking," interjected Dr. Carradine, one of the civilian scientists contracted through DARPA. His hair was cropped short, glasses perched precariously on the tip of his long nose. He tapped a stack of reports with a trembling finger. Black Dome was considered an anomaly, a localized event, but now we're seeing the same neurological patterns across multiple facilities. Subjects responding to unseen stimuli, shared brainwave spikes, synchronization. He paused, his voice quivering. "They're not just waking up. They're listening to something." "Listening to what?" the general demanded, his voice tight with skepticism. Carradine spread his hands in the air. "Well, that's the question, isn't it? Whatever signal or frequency is reaching them, it's bypassing every form of chemical control that we've relied on. We've kept them drugged, restrained, even lobotomized in some cases, yet here they are, showing coherence and intent." General Harlan's lips pressed into a thin line. He already knew what that doctor was implying, but he wanted to hear someone else say it. Dr. Carradine adjusted his glasses, meeting the general's stare. "Every specimen we've tagged, every single one, is showing neurological spikes. This isn't isolated. It's coordinated." Another voice spoke, cool and detached. Deputy Director Martin Crowell of the CIA, seated in the shadows near the wall. He jabbed a finger towards the monitor where the hybrid twitched against its restraints. "It's half dead. If you ask me, we terminate the program now." "Terminate?" Klein snapped, her voice sharp, breaking through the polished decorum of the room. "Do you understand what you're saying? We've spent decades, billions of dollars, and untold lives on these experiments. What's chained to that gurney isn't just a mistake, it's proof. Proof that human and cryptid DNA can merge. Proof that the myths were never myths at all. If we kill it, we lose everything. The CIA director interrupted. Everything? Well, you're assuming that there's something worth keeping alive, Dr. Klein. What I see is a liability. If the public learns we've been abducting cryptids, splicing their genomes, creating hybrids, he let the words hang, poisonous and heavy. Every lab across the country would go up in flames. Not just Nellis, Groom Lake, Oak Ridge, the facility under Cheyenne, even the remote stations in Alaska. Do you think civilians won't connect the dots once one leak hits the surface? Colonel Harris leaned forward again, his voice sharper now. With respect, sir, this is what happens when we play God. We've spliced DNA from species that weren't ever meant to coexist. Human, primate, extraterrestrial material. Hell, we don't even know what half of it is. And now, they're responding to some call. This is what happened at Black Dome. They coordinated, they fought back, and we couldn't contain it. Another official, a shadowy man from an unnamed agency, spoke from the far end of the table. His suit was black, his tie was dark, his eyes unreadable. Black Dome was contained and neutralized. Publicly, there was no Black Dome. No leaks, no survivors who weren't controlled, and that must remain the template here. Contain, suppress, destroy, if necessary. Terminate, destroy, Klein snapped. As I said, we're talking about years of classified research, billions in funding, breakthroughs that could redefine what it means to be human. These hybrids they're weapons, the shadowy man interrupted flatly. Weapons we cannot afford to lose control of. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. No one wanted to admit it, but every single person in that whole room had seen the hybrids up close. Some of them looked monstrous. Others looked eerily human. General Harlan straightened, his gaze cold, his voice booming across the room. The debate isn't just about morality, it's about survival. These labs, Denver, Spokane, Bangor, Groom Lake, every single one is reporting anomalies. Subjects are twitching against restraints and appear to be communicating. It's happening in unison. And if it spreads beyond the labs, if these things make contact with others outside our facilities, then Black Dome will look like a training exercise. Colonel Harris swallowed hard. General, what if they already have? The words dropped like a stone in a silent pool. General Harlan's knuckles whitened on the tabletop. He didn't want to admit it, but the possibility had already crossed his mind. The timing was just too perfect. The reports, too consistent. Something, or someone, was calling to the hybrids. Something powerful enough to override drugs, distance, even death. We have two options, Harlan said at last, his voice clipped. Final. We accelerate sedation protocols and double security, buying time to determine the source of this signal, or we initiate eradication procedures across all labs. No loose ends, no risk of exposure. Eradication? Muttered Dr. Klein bitterly. It's just another word for mass execution. The shadowy man from the agency folded his hands. Call it what you like, Dr. Klein, but if we fail, the American public will wake up to a reality that they're not prepared to face. Do you want school children finding out what monsters are real? Now, if that happens, humanity as we know it fractures. No one spoke after that. The hum of the fluorescent lights filled the void, and deep below them, in a sterile white chamber, another chained hybrid shifted on its gurney. Its eyelids fluttered, lips trembling under the weight of the sedatives. A whisper escaped, faint but undeniable. in a language older than any spoken by man. And somewhere in the room above, everyone felt the hair on the back of their neck rise. Klein shook her head. You're wrong. If the public knew the truth, if they understood what was out there, maybe we could unify, prepare for what's coming. Because whether we like it or not, something is waking them up. She nodded at the screen. That thing hears it. It's fighting the sedatives. It's listening. If we destroy it, we may cut off our only line of communication to whatever's happening on a global scale. General Harlan leaned forward, steel eyes cutting across the table. And if we don't? If it breaks containment? If it rallies the others like it? We're not talking about one cryptid in one cage. We're talking about hundreds, maybe thousands. Bigfoot, skinwalkers, sea serpents, God knows what else. Do you want them all marching towards Washington? The silence that followed was suffocating. Director Crowell stood, buttoning his suit jacket with an audible snap. The president will never allow disclosure, not like this. These things are weapons, or they're liabilities, but nothing in between. And right now, this one, he gestured toward the hybrid on the feed, is a liability. Dr. Klein's lips thinned, but her voice trembled with defiance. You can kill it, General. You can kill them all. But you cannot stop what's happening outside these walls. We thought we were the hunters. We thought that we controlled the myths. But if they've decided to step into the light... Her words trailed unfinished, but the meaning struck every person in the room like a hammer blow. The hybrid on the gurney suddenly jerked against its restraints, chains rattling. For one terrifying moment, the monitor zoomed close enough to catch its gaze, those golden eyes narrowing as though it could see them watching. And though no sound came from its mouth, every official in the chamber felt the same cold shiver race up their spines. It had heard. It was listening. And it was waiting. General Harlan shut the folder in front of him with a snap that made everyone in the room flinch. Clear the room, Harlan said, his gravelly voice decisive. Everyone except Colonel Harris. Now there was a scraping of chairs, muted whispers, and the shuffle of boots as the others exited the subterranean conference chamber. The thick blast doors sealed shut with a mechanical clank, and only then did Harlan reach for the secure phone embedded in the table. A red line. Direct. He lifted the receiver, pressed a key code sequence, and waited. A faint click, followed by the low hum of encryption, filled the silence, and then a voice, measured, tired, but authoritative, answered on the other end. Mr. President, Harlan began, his tone clipped. We have a problem. The pause was long enough to register concern. I assume it's bigger than what you briefed me with last month, General. Talk. Yes, sir, much bigger. Every laboratory across the entire program. Colorado, Washington State, Nevada, Maine, everywhere we have them. The subjects are showing signs of coordination. The sedatives are failing. Their brain activity has spiked in unison, almost like a synchronized pulse. Another long silence. This time the president's voice came quieter but sharper. Coordinated? You mean this is a repeat of what happened last month? Harlan swallowed hard. That is our assumption, sir. We believe it mirrors the incident at Facility Black Dome. The president exhaled audibly. The one that ended with 57 of our people dead? Yes, sir. And you're telling me that every lab, every site is experiencing the same awakening? Yes, sir. Harlan's hand tightened around the receiver. We've doubled the sedative dosages. It's not working. They're resisting, sir, actively. The president's voice dropped, laden with unease. And what about containment? Containment is questionable, Mr. President. There will be a lot of collateral damage. Questionable. The words seemed to hang in the air between them. The president's reply was barely a whisper. General, you need to tell me right now. Do we need to destroy them all to avoid risking the greatest national security breach in this country's history? Harlan closed his eye for half a second, gathering himself. Sir, if we destroy them, we lose decades of research, billions in investment, not to mention the possibility, he hesitated, his voice nearly faltering, that destroying them triggers whatever's controlling them, makes them retaliate. We don't know the scope of what we're dealing with. The president considered his words carefully. General, you have authorization to neutralize. All of them. No hesitation. Yes, sir. Harlan's jaw tightened. When the line went dead, Colonel Harris stared at his superior. Sir, he just gave us the green light to commit genocide. Harlan's hand hovered over the receiver, but he didn't respond immediately. He just stared at the polished metal of the conference table, his reflection dim and fractured, as if the weight of his decision had already carved cracks in his soul. Colonel, he said finally, his voice quiet but steady, sometimes genocide is just another word for survival. Okay, folks, another good story. And we got another one coming right up. So don't go anywhere. Maybe get some more coffee, freshen up, and we'll talk some more. But for now, enjoy the fire and let's tell some more stories. And if you're not going to stay around tonight, well, then I'll see you next time we're here, next week, around this campfire. You're always welcome. And until then, be good.